Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Well, as you can see, I've got a lot of boxes, a lot of gear on the desk here, and that's because I am putting together a new setup. Now I'm going to be replacing my Redcat 51, and I've been sort of thinking about doing this for a while, but I was sort of waiting for the right telescope to appear, and it did a few months ago, so I went ahead and ordered it, which is here, and this is sort of the star of the show for this video. But I just would want to go through some of the other equipment I've got here as well. Now, a lot of the gear that I've got is ZWO stuff. So a lot of the cameras, all the cameras are ZWO cameras, I think, apart from one QHY planetary camera. And I've got ZWO filter wheels and focuses, etc. I thought I would branch out into the world of Touptek, as a lot of people have done. There is an advantage cost-wise, I've discovered. So that helps, especially when trying to bring things in from overseas to New Zealand with what our dollar's worth, and also with the taxes that we get hammered with. And that sort of helped with my decision on to try this other brand. Now I am going to still be using my ZWO EAF because that's coming off the Redcat, and I'll be using that as the focuser. I just mentioned, if you can hear what sounds like musical drums in the background, that's because the band at the neighbours next door is practicing. They're actually pretty good, so don't mind hearing it. Yeah, so I'll be using this. Now I decided filter wheel wise I would go for the Touptek one. It was cheaper than the ZWO one, so it made financial sense. I haven't heard any bad things about it, so I thought, well, it must be just as good as the other, so I'll give that a go, and I've got to load some filters onto that because there's none in it yet at the moment. Filter wise, I have some Optolong 3nm SHO filters. Now I actually won these in one of the Optolong's competitions, so thank you very much Optolong, last year, but I've been waiting to put together a setup to use it, and that time has now come. For the LRGB filters, I got some Antlia ones, which I've used before. I've got both Antlia and Optolong LRGB filters, so I thought I'd grab another set of Antlia ones this time. When I was going to get the camera, I was looking at the prices around there, and Testar in Australia were having a bit of a special. I looked at the Touptek camera and the 2600, and I looked at the ASI 2600 from ZWO. The difference in price with this particular special was $400. So this won from that point of view. I again haven't heard anything bad about these. I've only heard good things about them. Same type of sensor. They have a USB hub in the back, etc. So yeah, looking forward to trying this one out. Yeah, seeing how it goes. Now this one, it was on special. It was $300 cheaper than normal with their special. That's New Zealand dollars, and about $400 cheaper than the ZWO one. Now the other advantage was that it came with a free guide camera from Touptek, and this is the 290 color. So yeah, this normally costs about 299 New Zealand dollars. So again, it was a no-brainer to get this package because it was cheaper and came with this free. Now what I would advise is that you check your packaging really well, because I know that when I looked at the Testar website, it talked about the camera. It said it came with a free guide scope. Guide camera. When I looked at the Touptek site, they had the camera, no free guide camera, but it came with a free tilt plate. And so because that wasn't mentioned on the Testar site, I thought that they were doing the camera and not the tilt plate instead. So I got the camera out, the two cameras out, and had a look at them. In the bottom of the box there just seemed to be that sort of giant bubble wrap in there, and so I put that by the front door to put out in the recycling. Fortunately, my wife went through it and had a check, and hiding in the bubble wrap was the tilt plate. So yeah, that nearly disappeared out with the recycling, so I'm glad she checked that for me. Now, because I am using Touptek gear, Touptek camera, filter wheel, etc., I can't use the ASI Air Pro that I've been using with the Redcat. So that's probably going to be moved to a setup with one of my Samyang lenses. Because of that, I need to run it, say, with Nina, and I need a little mini PC. So I'd seen lots of videos from people like Glenn and Simon, etc., who had used these quieter mini PCs, Melee Quieter. So this is the Melee Quieter 4C, the N100 I think it's called, and if I remember rightly, 16 gig of RAM and 256 gigabytes of hard drive space. Nice and slim, pretty light. It has 2 USB 3 ports here and a USB 2 port over here. It's got a USB-C over here and another USB-C over here. I think one of these is for power. I'm not sure. I'm just going to have to look into that more fully. A couple of HDMIs and an Ethernet port, and as far as I understand, Wi-Fi on board. Now I'm going to be using this more in my portable setup where I'm going to be moving it out of the house onto the deck and imaging or whatever and moving it back again, so this should function perfectly fine. Yeah, it's a lot smaller, a lot lighter than the Intel NUCs I'm using out in the observatory, so and being fanless, this shouldn't have any problems with vibration, etc. I understand they get pretty hot, and I have felt it get a bit hot because I have preloaded this now with all the software I think I need, I hope I need. I've loaded up with Nina and PhD2 and also the offline sky map for Nina. I've loaded in all the drivers that I can think of, but no doubt when it comes to First Light I will have found I've forgotten something and it won't quite work, but we'll see how we go. Fingers crossed I've loaded everything on there. Now what I'll do is I'll quickly clear the deck. I want to get on to the sort of the star of the show. Okay, might be mistaken, but I think I can hear some Red Hot Chili Peppers coming out of the band next door. So look, on to the star of the show, as I've said, and that is the new telescope. Now I wanted to get something to replace the Red Cat 51, so I wanted it to be reasonably fast and reasonably wide. I was looking at various different options out there. I really liked the telescopes that Askar have been producing. I've got the 65PHQ, and there's a video about that which I'll put in the description below and put a link above. And I love that telescope. It's got a beautifully flat field. That is with an APS-C sensor because I've only got 2600 mm Pro. That's as big as my sensors get. I don't have a full frame sensor. For my cameras at least, it's got a great flat field. And I've been really happy with some of the images that I've produced with that. I thought, well, why not look at Askar again? Now, they've got a range of telescopes, obviously, different types. I think there's the FRA types, there's the PHQ ones, there's a whole lot of them. And I saw them come out with a sort of an SQA range. And I like the look of that. It's a bit more expensive than the 65PHQ, but I think that sort of comes along with, you know, obviously some quality advantages, I presume. So let's pull this out. And so there we go. This is the box, the SQA70. Now let's open this up and have a look inside. So a very nice case here, sort of a soft case, but well packed in here. And I've taken it out of the packaging, out of the plastic that was all wrapped around it. Now, I think that's on here already is an M72, I think it's M72 to M54, but you also get ones that step down to M48 and M42. Just looking at it, it's a nice compact design. It's actually quite weighty. I presume that's just because of the quality of the glass in here. It's a quintuplet Petzval design, and it's got 2 bits of ED glass in it. Now the focal length on this is 336 millimeters, so not as wide as my Red Cat, which is at 250 millimeters, but is wider than the 65PHQ, which I think is 416 millimeters. Now the telescope is f4.8, so that's similar to the Red Cat, which is also f4.8, and it's, you know, considerably faster than the 65PHQ, which I think is f6.5 or 6.7. Again, I'll put that up on the screen if I've got that wrong. So it's a nice fast scope, which also accounts for a bit of an increase in the price. Now, being a Petzval design, which I love and really appreciate with it when it comes to my 65 PHQ. It means I don't have to faff around with getting exactly 55mm back focus or trying to account for 0.5 mil for filters and all that kind of stuff. Now, so long as you're between 37mm and 68mm, you should be able to achieve focus. So I like the fact that I'm not having to find so many different, you know, perfectly sized adapters to just get to that exact 55. So on the top here, you can see that there is a place for a guide camera, for example, or guide scope, should I say. There is an optional handle that you can buy that you can thread into here to carry it around. I won't be bothering with that because it'll be set up on the mount, on the AM5 mount pretty much all the time. But I will be putting a guide scope on in this position. There's 2 more places for putting other accessories. So for example, if you're running the ASI Air with ZWO equipment, you could mount it on here. And I'll see about how I'm going to mount the mini PC, but maybe I'll end up using one of these slots, or I might position it somewhere else. Let's check the dew shield. So hopefully it's nice and firm. So it's got one little knob on the top here, and if I pull it out, yeah, nice and firm. And I like that because it just means it's not going to wobble around the place while it's being used. You can just give it a light tighten and it's really nice and firm. Unlike my Skywatch SQA70, where even though it's got 2 sort of knobs to try and tighten it, it still moves around all over the place, and you've got to use other measures to try and stop it from moving around. But that's great, I like that. I'll just loosen up again, push that back. Now it comes with a dual speed focuser, as they all do, and I'll be putting the ZWO EAF on. And as I move the focuser, and I'll show you a closer image, but there are measurements here from 0 to 360 degrees, so you can actually rotate, use the rotator here and know exactly where you are. The markings are there, and if I just put this down like so and loosen it off, you can just rotate it nicely to whatever angle you want. And take note of the position that you've got your camera, particularly if you change to another target and you want to move between the 2 of them. You don't necessarily need a mechanical or electronic rotator like I've got on the Skywatcher. I mean, it's really nice. It can very accurately move from one angle to the other, depending on what target you're doing, you know, in the same night, different nights, and get you right back to where you were for the previous session. But that's an extra cost, an extra weight on the back, etc. Whereas in this sort of setting, I can always just take note and what rotation I was and just get back there. Yeah, a really nice, quite weighty telescope. And the other thing I'm actually pleased about is that they've given us a good long dovetail plate on the bottom here. Now, other telescopes have had, and I think the Red Cat, when it came with it, came with a very short dovetail plate, and you know, the first thing that people had to do was get rid of it and buy a new longer one, because by the time you're adding all the equipment on the back, like filter wheels and your camera and maybe an off-axis guider, you needed plenty of room to be able to move this to try and achieve balance. I know it's not so critical on the harmonic mounts, but you know, I still think that it's nice. It's probably nicer for the harmonic mount to try and get at least close to center. You don't have to be exact. I think it's, you know, at least be kind to the harmonic mount and not put extra strain on it by having it way off balance. So I'm glad they've included a long dovetail plate. I have quite a lot to do now to get this all set up and ready before the first premiere night. I'm really looking forward to using this and seeing how it performs. And I'm, you know, hoping it's got a nice flat field. From the small number of reviews on this, and there's not many out there, they've all been positive, and certainly of the other Askar telescopes, and from my own personal experience, a nice flat field. So I'm hoping this one will as well. But now I've got to go and get those filters into the filter wheel, yeah, connect everything up, and hope like heck I have all the correct software loaded onto the mini PC. Okay, I'll quickly weigh this. It says in the description that the OTA is 2.68 kilos, but the whole kit and caboodle here should be 3.5 kilos. So we'll just carefully rest it on there like that, and yeah, it's pretty close, 3.560 kilos. And yeah, I don't know if these are 100% calibrated, these kitchen scales, but that's as they say. Alright, so I've decided to set up in the observatory. There's been a lot of wind and it was very, very windy last night when I first set this up in here. It's dropped away a little bit now, so I'm hoping it'll stay or keep reducing, but you know, it's still going around 15 to 20 kilometers an hour at times. So this is the setup I have, and I've actually ended up bolting the filter wheel onto the camera. Now I do like the system that they have. I think in the ZWO filter wheels, you have to take the carousel out in order to bolt it onto the camera, whereas this has got a much better design where you actually just need one filter slot empty. So I actually just took the luminance out, and then I could do up all 4 bolts and put the luminance back in again. And of course easy to do before you actually put your filters in. It just means that you're not sort of demolishing your, or taking apart your filter wheel and having to put it back together again. So we're on the AM5 here. I've got the ZWO EAF on here. Now I'm using up here just the QHY guide scope, and just trying to work out how to use the Touptek guide scope, because it wasn't, I couldn't get focus last night, so I've just quickly put in the ASI 120 Mini. Now you'll notice that the ASI Air is here. This is not actually running the rig, it is purely being used for power distribution, because down in the hammock here I've got the Mealy Quieter 4C running everything. So I do have one of these SV Boney, or you know, the little power devices that everybody's been doing videos on. I do have one coming to replace this, and I'm hoping that they'll put out a pro version, which will mean I'll have some software in there where I can actually sort of control maybe the USB ports and the power, etc. Apart from that, we're all ready to go, and hopefully can get some first light with this telescope and see how it performs. Right, so I've managed to get a bit of time under the stars with this telescope, nowhere near the amount of time that I wanted to with 2 of the filters at least. I did the Lagoon Nebula with the Trifid Nebula in the field of view, and I wanted to get lots of O3 in order to show up that supernova remnant that's nearby. Unfortunately, there were some complicating factors. There are about 3 complicating factors actually. The first is the weather. That's packed up, and we are very much in a cycle of strong winds and rain. The other was a problem with my filter wheel, and the third was some severe tilt that was going on. So I'll talk about those one at a time. Now, with the HA filter, I did manage to get, as I said, 14.5 hours, but that was with very, very bright moon, and with an extraneous light source that was getting into my subs. Not so noticeable on the HA, but very, very obvious on the S2 and O3. So all of those initial ones I had to throw away. It turned out to be a problem with my Touptek filter wheel. Now, I didn't realize this. There is a little infrared light in there which reads the position of the filter wheel. So when you change filters and the carousel starts to move, the little infrared light comes on, and it works out where exactly your carousel is and knows, you know, where to put the filter you've requested in the right spot. And then it stops, and then the light goes out, and then you're supposed to be able to then go ahead and image. On my filter wheel, and it was on quite a few of the Touptek ones, it stayed on the whole time. So you were getting this infrared light source in your filter wheel and therefore getting through the filters and onto your camera. And fortunately, it was very quickly fixed with a firmware upgrade, but it did take me about a week to try and track down what was going on, and I was swapping things backwards and forwards between different setups. And I did a video about that, which I'll put a little link above and in the description below. But I'll show you what I was dealing with. So here is an 03 capture with and without the light leak going on, or light source in the filter wheel. So we can see over here, this is very much, you can see there's a lot of extra light in here, which is drowning out a lot of the detail. I mean, the reflection nebula you can barely see over here at all. Whereas over here, this is once it was solved, and a big difference. And you can actually see the, zoom in, you can see the reflection nebula showing up there in a single sub and none of it there. I mean, I know this is an 03 filter, but this is where the reflection nebula is. And you can also see more of that 03, which starts to leak out of the Lagoon. Hard to appreciate on this one. So this affected both the S2 and the 03 filters. So the first ones that I took, I had to throw away. And so I managed to get a bit of time, but only 1 hour of 03 and 1.5 hours of S2 before the weather packed up. Now, the other complicating factor that I had when I first started taking images, so I'll show you here, I got this 03 once I had sorted out the light leak and everything. And this looks okay when you first have a look at it, but if you actually get the aberration inspector out and have a look and do a mosaic, you can see there's something very, very wrong here. If we zoom into the bottom right-hand corner, nice round stars as we move along here, nice round stars going up here. And then as we start to go up, they start to get out of focus, quite out of focus, and up in this top corner here, quite severely out of focus. So if I show you this image in ASTAP and we undergo into tools and image inspection and have a look at tilt, you can see it's pretty severe. It says here 56% extreme, and some of them were up at like 74%. Looked pretty out of whack. So my obvious concern was, where is the source of this tilt? Do I have a really bad tilt on the sensor of my camera? My other cameras haven't had tilt. This is the first time I've used a Touptek camera. It turns out that it's not the camera's fault. What it was, I found out that when the drawtube sort of comes out in the telescope, and with all the weight of the camera and filter wheel on the back, it was a little bit loose in there, and it meant that there was quite a sag. And I could actually move the whole draw tube pretty easily up and down. And there was, as you can see from the video, quite a bit of movement here. So I contacted Sharpstar Optics, and they said to tighten the little bolts on either side near the focusing mechanism. Now there are 4 bolts there, which in theory you would like to tighten, but only 2 of them are accessible. The other 2 are partly sort of obscured by the whole mechanism of the focuser. So I just tightened those about a 20th of a turn as they suggested. That firmed the whole imaging train up, that movement disappeared, and then I took some further images. And if we have a look at this one, this is a 5-minute sub after tightening the bolts. As you can see, I've labeled it on the 03 filter. If we look into the mosaic now, you can see that these stars at the top are nice and in focus and nice and round. So that's the top right, and we move across the field to the top left. There's not a lot of stars to look at, but you can see this one is nicely round. These are all round right down to the bottom left, and we move across here to the bottom right. Nice round stars, all in focus, and of course the same with the center. So that was quite a relief to see that was easily fixed with a little tighten of the bolts. I'm assuming that most of these telescopes will come out and they'll be perfectly fine, but if anyone buys one and they find the same situation as I have, just a little tighten, about a 20th of a turn on those 2 bolts, and you should be good to go. So I'd like to show you the stacks of what I captured. This is the 14.5 hours of HA. Bearing in mind this is with the light leak going on inside the Touptek filter wheel, because I hadn't discovered it by the time I'd taken my 14.5 hours. This is obviously a little bit overblown, but you can fix that in processing. There's nice detail in here. You can see some nice sort of wispy areas of the HA in here, and some of the dark nebula. A lot of the detail in the core in here is actually really nicely picked up with an S2, which I'll show you that in a minute. Now, this is the S2. This is only 1.5 hours. Again, some really nice detail in the core of the Lagoon Nebula, and I think this is where the S2 really shines on this target, and some pretty good detail on the Trifid Nebula as well. So just 1.5 hours, and this is just 1 hour of oxygen 3. And we're picking up some of the, this is the reflection nebula that you normally pick up with the blue filter. Some of it is picked up with the O3 filter. And yeah, we can see some of the lagoon, the O3 that leaks out of it, appears to be leaking out or overflowing from the lagoon here. I would have loved to have captured a lot more hours to show this more obviously. And down here, there are some hints of the supernova remnant here, but again, not really enough to bring out with a decent image. I needed a lot more hours on this. So this is what the HA looked like with a bit of processing and the stars removed, and you can see some nice detail in the Lagoon Nebula and the Trifid Nebula here. And if I have a look at the S2 stack, again, as I mentioned, lots of nice detail right in the core of the lagoon with the S2 filter and with the Trifid Nebula. And with the O3, 1 hour worth, where I have actually sort of darkened the background a fair bit. This is still pretty bright. This was sort of made brighter just to show that the O3 that sort of appears to leak out of the Lagoon Nebula was being picked up, but nowhere near as much as I'd like. And you can see parts of the supernova remnant just starting to show up here, but just not bright enough. And when I combined it, it pretty much got overrun by the HA. Now, I wanted to get an image together, even though I had very limited O3 and S2. So I ended up doing an HOO first of all, so with the HA and the O3 filter, and then I blended in a sort of colorized S2 so that I could have that nice, red of the HA and the blue of the O3, but then just add in the S2. And how I did that was using the image blend script. Now, Adam Block did a video on this through the Astro Imaging channel just recently, and I kind of follow the steps through there, and I'll show you the image blend script now. So back into PixInsight under scripts. Now, I'll put a link in the description below to the website of Cosmic Photon so you can get the links to these scripts, but you'll basically just copy the links of each script, go up to resources, updates, manage repositories, do add, paste in that link, make sure I've got to put cancel there, and then you'll go to resources, updates, and check for updates. And they sort of do it one at a time, and they'll appear under here under scripts, Cosmic Photons, and this is the image blend script that I was talking about. Now, what you do is you have your base image here, which for me was the HOO version, which I think is this one here. It should appear any second now. There it is. You can see it's just the red and the blue. And then what I did was I selected my S2 here, which at the moment is on replace, so it overruns it. Now, I have darkened everything because I don't want this too bright, because what it'll end up doing is really brightening everything. So you don't want to have your S2 too bright. Probably the background is looking a little bit dark here, but that's because I've fiddled around with some of the settings here. But you can go and you can colorize it with on this bit here, click on color, and then you can just use this slider to choose whatever color you want. I sort of chose this color. And then when you come down here, you've got a whole lot of options here. But if you do screen, there it is, it's popped in. Now you can see that sort of nice orange here, and it's kind of made this not quite such a deep red. And yeah, I thought a bit more appealing the way it looked here. And you can actually change various components of both the base image and the blend image using these, just the black point, highlights, midpoint, your opacity, how much of it gets involved in there, and the same with your base image. And then when you're done, you just click, the usual tick, and there it is. And then you can add your stars. So in the end, I ended up with this image here with the stars added, which I was reasonably happy with. I obviously wanted a lot more O3 so I could pick up the supernova remnant that's around here. The little bit that was in the O3 did get kind of overrun by the HA here. You can see sort of a hint of it there, but This really needs quite a few more hours of oxygen 3 to show it to any great degree, but I wanted to get some sort of image together, and this was sort of the best representation I could get with my limited time on 2 of the filters. This is not usually how we see the trifid. I mean, often it's that nice sort of pink color here, and then you see the blue reflection nebula, but when you're doing just narrow band instead of RGB, it comes out a bit more like an SHO image. This, as I said at the beginning, no calibration frames, so no flat frames, no dark flats, no darks. So I thought that wasn't bad, given the lack of calibration frames and also the very limited amount of time on a couple of filters. All right, well, I think we'll wrap things up here. This has been my first light with the Askar SQA70 telescope. And apart from a few little issues with the telescope and the tightening of the bolts, and also my filter wheel issues, I am pleased to report that the telescope does indeed have a flat field as advertised, with nice round stars right to the corners, at least using an APS-C size sensor like the 2600. I'm also quite pleased with the amount of detail that it captured with the S2 and the O3 filters, given their limited amount of time. But having an f4.8 telescope, a nice fast telescope, certainly helps. And I'm quite excited to see what it can do once I get it up to Lang's Beach into the nice dark skies and away from my light pollution here at home. So look, until next time, I hope everybody's getting lots and lots of clear skies.